Hey everybody, it's Dana. Welcome back. On Friday, I shared with you guys a card I made with the center burst background stamp from Simon Says Stamp. Today, I'm going to share with you how to use that center portion of that background stamp. I went ahead and I placed this onto my mini MISTI lid, and this is really going to be important for me because I want to stamp this again a little bit later. So if you want to try this technique, just make sure you have a stamp positioning tool, or you can line this background piece up a little bit later after you finish coloring. So I'm making sure that my piece of paper is tucked neatly into my MISTI, and I'm using a magnet to make sure I hold it in place. Now for my ink today, I'm going to use the Blackout ink from Inkon 3, and I'm going to stamp up this beautiful centerpiece of this image. Now I'm double checking to make sure that my piece of paper is nice and tucked into that corner, and I'm going to press down hard. Now I'm just going to ink this up one more time just because this is a very large piece and I'm going to make sure I get full coverage on this. So I'm going to swing my lid back over and I'm going to gently press down, and I'm really pressing, really hard across just the center part because I want to make sure I get a good impression. Now since that looks pretty good and I think I have all of my areas covered, I'm going to go ahead and grab a piece of paper that's been laminated. It's just a regular piece of paper that's been laminated, and I'm going to grab my Nuance powders. Now I will link to the video that I did last week showing you how I colored with these on the original card that I made with the outer portion of the stamp set. I'm going to tap some of this Nuance powder right onto that laminated cardstock, and this is going to be my palette for today. Now, a little bit of this powder goes a long way, so I'm not going to tap out too much, and I'm going to just add a little bit of water. So I'm kind of spritzing off to the side of my powder pigments, and I'm just going to start getting a little bit of the water puddles. And now I'm just going to mix it in with my pigment powder. Now I'm going to paint with my powders today. Instead of sprinkling them onto my paper, I'm actually using it as like I normally would use like my paint. So I'm going into areas and mixing my colors together. As you can see here, I'm mixing that pink and that purple, the pink and the teal together to get myself like a pretty purple shade. Now this allows me to have a little bit more control over where this pigment powder goes. Now you'll see in the video prior on Friday that once you put down this powder, it kind of takes on a avenue or a way of color moving all the colors together on its own. This way, if I place the powder down off of the paper using my own little color palette off to the side, I can kind of control where I want the specific colors to go. So I'm going to have some areas that I just want to be pink. I have some areas that I'm going to have are going to be blue, and then I'm going to have some areas that are going to be like the pink and blue together. That's going to make that gorgeous purple shade. So as you can see, I'm just mixing the colors together, and now I'm going to bring in a little bit more of that pink powder just to have a little bit more of the stronger solid pink. So this is a great way to use your pigment powders on their own and just to do coloring with them instead of directly doing it to your paper. So I'm just going to start filling in the rest of this center burst. And again, I'm allowing some of those colors to mix, and I'm using my paintbrush just to color in areas that I might just want to blend on my own with my brush. So this is a really fun way to stretch those pigment powders. And again, like I said, if you don't have these Nuance colors, you can do this with your BRUSHO pigment powders or your Colourburst pigment powders. Now since I have most of the areas colored in, I'm just going to fill in what is left. and have this beautiful, almost like tie-dyed center brush. I really love how this looks. Absolutely love it. And I was able to control pretty much where I wanted my colors to be. So I'm just going to fill in a few more of those areas, and I really love the way the teals and the blues blend together. I mean, the teals and the pinks blend together because they make this gorgeous purple color. Now, since I have most of the coloring done, I'm going to allow this to kind of sit for a minute, and I'm going to spritz it with some water. And when we spritzing it with the water, it's actually going to allow the color to kind of like settle down into the paper and move just a little bit. It's not going to move too much because obviously I've already painted the color where I wanted it, but I can come in with my paintbrush, add a little bit more color, and kind of just push the color where I want it if there was any open spaces left. I'm going to come right back in and finish off just the tips where I might not have enough color, but with having the paper a little bit more wet now, that allows me just to fill in any little gaps that I might have that I don't want that area to be white. So I'm using a very fine paintbrush. This is a number 2 paintbrush to do a lot of the detail work on this one. Now that's pretty much filled in, and now I can slide my panel out of the way, and I want to heat set this. And as I heat set this, this is going to dry back, and it's going to become a little bit softer and really pretty. All right, now since that's dry, I'm going to come in with my Fine Tech watercolors, and these are some pretty shades of gold and silver. I'm going to spritz down one of the gold colors just a little bit with my water, and I'm going to mix some of it off onto my lid. Now I'm going to add some of this gold directly to just a few of those images or those half moon circles on this gorgeous background piece. Now I could have left this as is with just having the pigment powders, but I felt that I wanted to add just a little bit of gold to this. So on these background stamps, you could watercolor them, you can use the BRUSHOs or the Color Bursts or the Nuance powders. You can also use color pencils as well as Copic markers. Totally up to you. They're just such a beautiful piece to color, or like I said in the other video, you can just stamp them out on black, on white paper, or stamp them out in a color on white paper, and it will look just as beautiful. Now since I have the areas colored in that I want, I'm going to mix up a little bit more of this gold paint, and then I'm going to splatter, do some few little random gold splatter marks just to add a little bit more gold to this panel. And I'm just lightly tapping on the back of my paintbrush just to add just a fun couple of splatters. And because this paintbrush is small, I'm not getting big splatters, and that's what I don't want. I just want thin ones. And then I'm going to come back in and I'm going to heat set that. And as you can see, I did everything within my MISTI. I did not move it, and that was intentional. I wanted to make sure that my paper pretty much stayed as is within my lid or within my MISTI. So now since that's done, now I'm going to restamp my image because it has kind of faded out with all the watercoloring. I now want my lines to be a little bit more crisp. So that's one reason I really needed to make sure that I heat set this image so it did not bleed once I restamped it. So I'm going to line everything back up, and I'm just going to have to move that bar out of the way, and then I can close down my MISTI lid. And again, I used the same ink. I used the Blackout ink, and I'm just going to press down pretty evenly. And then now look how great that image looks. I really needed to have that black come forth again. And look how pretty. Oh, I love this stamp set. Absolutely love it. Now I want to go ahead and mount this image on a background piece of black paper. And that's just so I have a piece to ground this image. I'm going to put this, as you guys already know, on a white card base. So I felt the need to have this grounded on a nice framed out piece. So I'm just going to use a black matte piece for this image. So I'm going to use my grid mat to help me line everything up. And look how beautiful that image is. I love how this turned out with just allowing the Nuance pigment powders to kind of be my coloring medium for today. Absolutely love that. And now I have my white card base, and it looks really, really nice having that black border all the way around that image. So I'm going to grab my ATG gun again. And then I can bring this right onto my card base. Now this is a very clean and simple card, and I'm really allowing that burst to be the focal point. Now for my sentiment today, I'm using a piece that had already stamped out. It says Happy Mother's Day, and this is from the Mom and Dad's Icon stamp set from Simon Says Stamp. And I'm just going to use some pop dots just to pop up this strip in mirroring that black from the background border piece. And I'm just going to place this right across the center of this beautiful piece. So it really doesn't cover up too much of it, but it gives my sentiment a nice place to rest. And that is my card for today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I will see you guys in another video soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.